Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Everybody well awake after Ken's great talk and have enough coffee in all of your system? All right, let's get started. So we had some great talks yesterday and today as well. And can you tell me what all of those talks have in common? Yes, data and great storytelling. So my talk is going to be on storytelling with data, and I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks how we all can become better at storytelling with data. And I'm going to try something out, and I'm going to attempt storytelling with data using storytelling with data, so that at the end of it, we all become better at storytelling together. And also, I am not just telling you what you all should do, but I am also showing you what can be done and what good looks like. So what all great storytelling have in common? It always starts with a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And always the plot starts with incidents, and then it recognizes the different characters, and then the story builds slowly, and after some incidents, we reach a climax, and then we have some following actions, and then we have a resolution. But when you are talking about storytelling with data, it looks a little bit different, so I had to create a graph of my own. So we will follow the similar narrative arc of beginning, middle, and end, but in the beginning, I am going to introduce the plot. I am going to talk about why it's important, why all of you should pay attention to me. And in the middle, I'm going to talk about some examples and some do's and don'ts where you can take practical tips to become better at storytelling yourself. And then hopefully, when everything comes together, we all have that aha moment when you realize how exactly it works. And then we will end with some key takeaways and a call to action. So now we are here at the very beginning of storytelling. So first, why is it important? So data says that 63% of the people remembered a story, but only 5% remembered a statistics. That makes sense, right? We are all human beings, and storytelling has been there forever. We have been using data and visualization to tell our stories, and some of these even remain now. Storytelling is engaging, it's educational, it increases your curiosity. It's also universal because it can be translated in multiple different languages. In terms of data and visualization, you don't even need language in some situations. And also, it's memorable. So that's kind of all, hopefully gives you enough idea of why it is important, but why it has to be me talking about this particular topic. If you search in Google with storytelling with data, you will get 1,000 and 1,000 articles of what it means to be great at storytelling with data. There is a book called Storytelling with Data, and it is a great book, by the way, you all should read it. So why am I here talking to all of you about storytelling with data? So I am Subhasree Chatterjee. I'm a lead data analyst with LexisNexis, working for more than 5 years now. And as I have grown in my career from an IC now leading a team of data analysts, what I've realized is even if you are great at doing the analysis itself and you have some great results with huge statistical significance, if you are not able to tell a good story of why that data matters to your stakeholders, that data won't be able to create that impact that it should create. So we all need to be better at storytelling with data to be able to communicate with our stakeholders and to be able to create the impact that we can with data. So when I started looking at this particular topic, initially I was thinking that it's me problem, that I kind of zone out in most of the presentation 5 minutes in and start scrolling through my phone. But then I realized it's not a me problem, and 79% of the people say that presentations are boring. And 46% have admitted, and admitted is the key word here, that they get distracted. So if we all are emotional human beings, whenever we communicate with each other within our group, we use storytelling, then what is going wrong in this corporate setting, and why aren't we able to communicate in a similar manner when presenting our data or our work to our stakeholders? So I think there are 3 reasons. First, we don't know always who our audience is, or we don't pay enough attention to be able to speak their language. And second, we overemphasize on data. We want data to tell the story for us. But then data is only going to tell what the data says. It is your job to be able to share the insights, not only the data with your stakeholder. And the last is not making emotional connection. Again, we all are emotional human beings. So if you are not able to create that emotional connection with the people that you are speaking with, you are not able to create that impact that you can with including that emotion. So to be able to not repeat these mistakes when I am talking with all of you, I needed to make sure that I know who the audience I'm going to be speaking with. Now, I know, of course, it's a UX/UX conference, so there are going to be UX people here, but that doesn't give me enough information to know exactly who am I going to talk to it about. So that's why I reached out to Rory and Catherine, and I wanted to see what exactly the audience breakdown looks like. So as you can see in the left graph here, we do have a fair distribution of UX product and development. But if you look at the right side of the chart, majority of the people here are experienced practitioners and senior management. So that gives me a little bit better idea of who am I going to speak with. But then I also needed to understand your motivation behind why you are in this conference and why you are attending talks like these. So the majority of the people said that learning is a big part of it. You want to know about practical situation, practical case studies, which you can then go back and replicate in your own role. So that gives me much better idea about what exactly you are expecting. So now we are here in the end of the beginning, where I have explained through why it is important and why is it me here and why you should pay attention. Now let's get into the middle of it, and I am going to spend majority of my time here explaining different elements of storytelling and how we can get better at it. So there are 3 elements of storytelling: data, narrative, and visualizations. You start with data, then you build a narrative around it, and then you use proper visualizations that help you tell that particular story. So let's look at it individually. We will start with data. And the first thing that I want all of you to remember is be the data detective. So whenever you have a problem in hand, first look for the evidence. What are the data support you can have to prove the problem you have and how big the problem is? So 2 of my advice here: first, look for data that reject your hypothesis. How many times did you have a stakeholder come to you and ask you for data that exactly supports what hypothesis that they have? So this is a Dilbert meme kind of suggesting exactly that, right? And it was like too funny for me to not share it here, because we all, I feel like, can relate to this, and this is very real, even though it's kind of sad in a way. So first, look for the data that rejects your hypothesis, and also make sure that you are doing the analysis right. So this particular graph talks about US spending on science technology, and it highly correlates. As you can see, the correlation is 99.79% with suicides by hanging. Now, the correlation is real. It's a fact. But then that doesn't mean a causation, or that doesn't mean that one is impacting the other. And there is a great quote from John Tukey talking about, if you torture data long enough, it's going to give you exactly what you want. So we definitely do not want to do that, and we want to make sure that we are doing the analysis right. But then once you have the data that you are looking for and you have done your analysis right, the next and the most important thing here is to be able to share the most impactful insights. And that's where I feel many of us go wrong, because when you are spending hours and hours solving a problem, talking with your stakeholder, trying to find a solution, you want to share every single thing that you have discovered through your analysis. And that's a very normal situation to have, but we will have to keep in mind that even if you have spent hours and hours working on that project, you are getting only 25 or 30 minutes to talk with your stakeholders and let them grasp every single thing that you have done. So keep in mind 4 of these factors to be able to get to the most impactful insights. And here where actually our villain shows up as well, because we end up emphasizing more on the data, not thinking enough about our audience, and not creating the emotional connection with them. So keep in mind 4 things. First, actionability. So the data that you are sharing, the insights you are sharing, what actions can the audience take based on everything that you are sharing right now? It has to be relevant to the audience as well. So if you are talking with your direct stakeholder versus you are talking with your CEO, the data that you are sharing is going to look very, very different from each of those stakeholders. So keep in mind who you are going to share your insights with. Next is the impact on users. So we always have too many problems to solve, right? There will always be limitations on resources, on different challenges of technical feasibility. So you have to share the insights that is creating the most impact on your users. And last, arguably one of the most important one is alignment with the business goal. Again, when we are talking with our users, we are unrevealing some problems using our data, we tend to be very involved in there, and we want our product managers, our stakeholders to be able to solve every single problem the user is having. But if it does not align with the overall business goal that the company has, there is a huge chance that that's not going to end up being implemented. So we need to keep in mind all of those things as well. So now we have hopefully enough idea of what to do with the data part of it. Now let's look at the narrative. And here it actually goes really meta, because initially I have talked about following this narrative arc on my own talk. And you can keep in mind for most of your storytelling that you can follow this arc as well. But if you are thinking about sharing some insight with your stakeholder for them to take some actions on, you need to behave as the narrator or like the advisor, and you need to also show them that you are the expert here. And in most of the situation, the stakeholders do expect you to behave as the expert as well and share your recommendations. So start with that. Start with your main recommendations that you have for that particular problem, and then back that up with the most impactful insights that you have found from your data analysis. And that's where all of those different factors come in terms of like selecting the most impactful insights. And then also tell them what could be. So if you implement a solution like this based on my recommendation, what are the potential impact that you are seeing if those things are getting implemented? So this is one of my slides where there is a lot of text going on. So be here with me, but I wanted to share this particular one because I feel like we always go through these different stakeholders in our daily life where we are sharing our insights multiple times. So make sure that you are making that narrative personal. Because as I've mentioned in the beginning as well, if you are sharing something with the CEO which is too technical, too detailed, then you are going to lose that interest very quickly. So for the first one, with senior management, keep it high level. Create an elevator pitch which you can communicate within minutes of your interaction with the senior management. And also keep in mind 3 is the magic number. 3 recommendations, 3 impact, 3 data points generally create the necessary impact that you are trying to create. And always emphasize on the business impact. They are always dealing with business matrix and business situation. So it helps if you can keep the overall business impact in mind and share it with them on how your recommendation align with those business impact. And by format, I mean here, basically, I feel like we end up using presentation a lot more, and in every situations, you might want to think about different formats of storytelling instead of just using presentation all throughout. But for senior management, presentation mostly works well. Next, you have your direct stakeholders. For direct stakeholders, you have to start with the big picture and you have to start with the big recommendation, but there you have the opportunity to go into detail a little bit more because they are probably working with you closely enough to be able to understand those details, but don't go too much into technical stuff. And for this particular stakeholders, interactive dashboards, Miro board tend to work better than just sharing presentations and sharing just the highlight of it. Peer group is the perfect place for you to be able to share every single detail that you want to share with them. All the technical stuff, all your challenges, all your learnings from that particular analysis. Here's your opportunity. And you can think about sharing something like a 6-pager. It's an Amazon concept. I don't know how many of you are aware of it. But it's basically a 6 pages of Word document or any other sort of document format where you are sharing things in a much more detail than just like sharing highlights and sharing some data backing that up. For mixed audience, it's where it gets a little bit more difficult because you need to keep into mind people from different background, from different roles coming together and listening to you. So do not make any assumptions of prior knowledge. And also try to cater to different learning methods. And also keep in mind that all of them are there for a common reason. All of them are either trying to solve the problem, all of them are trying to understand the reason behind the problem. So find that and then try to work with them according to that. So now, as we have gone through this very text-heavy slides, here's my way of rewarding all of you with this cute cat gif. So this is something that is very important while storytelling with data. Keep in mind that what they are going to do about it. Because if you are sharing some insights and you are not really calling to action that like what they can do after they go out of the room, then again, like you are not able to create that impact that you can possibly. So always keep in mind that what they can do about it after they leave the room. So that's all from the narrative aspect of it. Let's look at some of the visual examples. The first recommendation I have here is use visuals to reinforce, not to distract people. And I am not even going to go into the details of these visuals because that's the exact point I'm trying to make, that don't create visualization which will just take 30 minutes of you to explain through this. And even then, I don't think I can do a good job of explaining what's going on here other than it looks like a tornado. So let's not do that. And the next one is let's not use pie chart. The only effective way of using pie chart is this, where you have talking about how much pie you have eaten versus how much you have not. But even then, I can do a better job with a bar chart. Because here, I don't even know, have I eaten 25%? Is it 27%? So I can do possibly a better job with a bar chart. So let's make sure that we are using effective visuals. So now we have made the connection of going from data to narrative to visuals. So here's just kind of like a recap of all of those things because I have gone through multiple different points. I have shared many different charts and visualizations. So just to make sure that you get the understanding of what exactly is going on. And for all of you, maybe to take a screenshot right here. So now we are at this point where we have gone through the beginning and middle, but there is something missing, right? The aha moment. We now know the theoretical aspect of it, how you can use these different elements to be able to tell a better story, but we still don't know how it actually works. So here is my time to be able to share some of the great storytelling that I have found on the internet. The first one is how the virus won. So this is a New York Times article published in June 2020. So this is just around 3 or 4 months into COVID. And it talks about how the virus won at that standpoint. So we are going to look through this video, but just wanted to give you a context a little bit more. This will go very quickly. So don't try to read through every single thing is there. The idea is to look at the visual and try to understand that if we are getting to the end of the story or not. So let's look quickly through it. It starts at the very beginning when we identified 2 different cases in US. Then it starts expanding. We start getting more and more cases throughout the US. And then there are hidden infections which are not detected, but they start forming these clusters across US. And then we start seeing some travel bans, but then it was only from China, so different countries are still flying in. And you are seeing all of these different places flying in across the US. And then you start seeing cases spreading a little bit more. And you started noticing different outbreaks. But then we are still traveling, right? We haven't stopped yet. So you are seeing all of these different clusters of cases and how they are moving across the country and how the virus is spreading through them. Now it starts talking about different variants that we saw at that point of a time and how much impact that they had. So the Seattle variant compared to the New York variant. And then we start seeing some local hotspot. And now it starts making that emotional connection, right? Now it starts talking about the individual cases and how they ended up being the super spreader and how they, because they moved around within the country, how that they ended up spreading COVID in their community. Now it uses colors like green, yellow, and red to showcase how things are changing and how things are slowly shutting down. So initially it was all green. Now you start seeing yellow and red. And very quickly it all becomes red. And now it talks about if we had done things sooner, how that would have avoided some of the infections and some of the deaths right there. And this is the situation as of June 2020. So I feel this particular story does a great job of starting with the data points that they had at that point in time, and then using visualization and using some of those brisk narrative when it was moving through the article, and it gives you a great idea of exactly what happened, how it happened, what we could have done differently to change it a little bit. And even any of you are like not aware of COVID for some reason, by the end of this article, you have exactly idea of what happened. So the next example I wanted to share is about this particular clock. It is actually right here in New York, and that's the address if you want to go after this conference and look at it yourself. But this is basically the climate clock. And it is showing the time frame that we have left until it is too late. And that's the quote it generally shows right after it shows the time, and the time is slowly ticking down. So this is a great example of using data to storytell and to inspire action. Because when you see the clock right in front of you slowly ticking down, it is hopefully invoking all the emotions in you and asking you to do something about it. What you can do to slow this clock down, what you can do to hopefully stop this clock altogether. So this is a great example of inspiring action through data and through storytelling. So now we are here at the end, and I'm going to leave you with some key takeaways and call to action. So these are the villains of our storytelling I initially remembered. Now, hopefully, after going through all of the different tips and tricks that I have mentioned, you can turn off those villains into heroes. Now you know how to use your audience information. Now you know that you should not ever emphasize on data, and you should use narrative and visuals together to be able to tell great stories. And now you also know how to make a great emotional connections. So this is my last thought and moral of the story right here. Tell a story that inspires action. That's the end of my story. Thank you so much. I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Okay. I'm throwing it to you, okay? Oh, thanks for the assist.
Hi. My question was related to the part where you kind of combine data as part of the story. So my question is, like, how do you ensure that when you're communicating something, you remain clear, but you're able to like preserve that data accuracy and not fall in oversimplifying something just so that it's understandable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's where you need to keep in mind the 4 factors that I talked about. It's not like you need to share only one data point. It's a combination of data points, but also think about the insights that you are getting from it, not just the like, this is what the data says and this is what we have seen the data is talking about. So keep in mind those 4 factors. Hopefully that will give you the direction to be able to choose the right amount of data points, and then also take help of all of these different visual techniques that you have, so that you are able to tell a story that matters, and whether it follows a time frame or if you are trying to showcase something else, depending on how many data points that you have. But hopefully those techniques will help you select the right amount.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Luke. I work at a data visualization company. Thanks so much for the great talk. I was wondering your point on starting with our recommendations as the expert, how we can kind of balance that without inciting bias in the audience.
Yeah, definitely. So you do have to keep all of your biases in mind, and that's why initially I talked about like try to reject your hypothesis. Because if you are trying to find the data that will support your case, you are probably going to find that data somewhere, right? So we need to be very intentional about it and making sure that we are covering all of our bases, or we are looking at all the necessary places so that we are not falling prey to some of those biases that we might have.
Thank you.
And we have a question right here. You got it.
That was a good throw. I have a similar question, and it's about presenting data to senior leadership when the data you're presenting to them is not what they want to hear. It is not supporting their hypothesis. And in my experience, starting right off with your recommendation, that is, you know, what you wanted to hear is not what you're going to hear from me. I'm just wondering if you have any tips of like how to maybe approach that differently when you know that your audience was expecting to hear A and you're coming back with B.
Right. I mean, start with that, right? Like, this is not what you want to hear, but this is what the data says. And like, you have done your work to be able to be like, I tried your way as well. So I tried to see that if I can find the data necessary to be able to tell your story, but this is not what I have found. and like don't shoot the messenger. Like, I cannot do anything about what the data is telling me, and I am just here to share that message with you. But also, like, in situations where they are trying to find exactly what they're looking for, there are reasons behind it, right? So that's where I meant about making that emotional connection. So you just don't have that transactional relationship with where your stakeholders, where they are just expecting you to share the data, but build or like develop that emotional connection, kind of try to understand where they are coming from, because they also probably have like some goals that they need to meet, right? Like they need to develop something or like release something because they are on a tight schedule. So like try to understand and try to kind of work together to be like, okay, let's see, this is not what you wanted to see, but let's see what we can do about it, instead of just being like, well, like it's not the one that you wanted to. So
We can squeeze in one more quick question. I think you were first, so sorry.
Thank you. I do like this thing. It's pretty cool. Thank you so much for this wonderful talk. I have a quick question. I love what you said about look for data that rejects your analysis. What I wanted to ask you about is what about ambivalent data? So let's say you came with something and you don't have, right, like the really clear one aha moment. You have a bunch. How would you storytell that, and how would you inspire it for decisions?
start with the most impactful one.
Okay.
So always, like as I was talking about aligning with business goals and aligning with their roadmaps or like their priorities. So start with the one that's like closely aligned with that. And also for like situations where you are talking about ambivalent data, it always helps to look to like the whole picture. So I always talk about like data doesn't necessarily mean just like set of quantitative data. You can like talk to your users, of course, all of you know that. But you can look at like customer support data. You can look at NPS data. You can look at exactly what they are doing in the product. So it's kind of combining all of these different data points, I feel, help reduce that confusion a little bit and helps you tell that overall story a little bit better. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Well, amazing talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.